We've heard from a number of politicians about the importance of foresight. What I'd like you to do, I think, is to explain what is foresight. This is a new job. What does it mean to be Vice President for Foresight? And does this mean that the Commission was not acting with foresight until 1 year ago?
I think for me, foresight means that it's really thinking about tomorrow, today. And actually, the Commission was working with the foresight already in the past. It was very famous President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, who set up at that time the prospective strategic, which was such a first foresight unit, but it was used more, I would say, in piecemeal approach. And what our president, Ursula von der Leyen, very much wanted is that we would really base our policies on evidence, on really foresighting and developing the future scenarios. And with giving me this new task, she also asked me that I should do my utmost that we would mainstream foresight not only into the policy cycle, but also to all flagship initiatives. So the fact that we are working now on a regular basis, and after this first ever strategic foresight report will be coming every year with, I would say, the topic which we believe foresight community should look at. We are also contributing to all flagship projects and initiatives with a very important foresight element, which means that our proposals would be more future-proof than in past. And my other capacity, I'm also responsible for better regulation. So we want to use also the foresight when we would be revising and looking at all the directives, all the regulations which we adopted over the past years, and making them again better equipped for the future developments. And I think what would be very important right now, because all the intervenants, the Prime Minister, ministers and Secretary General of the OECD, been referring to how these changes to theirs are dynamic, how the new technologies are almost arriving every day, and therefore we're also looking for the ways how we can keep the pace with the technological change, how we can follow our strategic guidelines, meaning that we want to benefit at the maximum from the green and digital transformation, and also use the current crisis for making Europe more resilient. So I would say this is, in a nutshell, the area which we want to cover. And I have to say that we have very enthusiastic response, not only from my colleagues in the Commission, the commissioners, the services, but also, as we can see, from the member states, from the academia. And we want to use this goodwill, this interest, and this positive energy for really taking maximum advantage of foresight.
Is there a limit to how effective you can be, though? Because to take the pandemic as an example, the idea that there would be a pandemic like this at some point was quite well known. Lots of people talked about it. But of course, one of the particular problems at the European level has been that the major competences, health, national security, and so on, are still very much with member states. And so the role and the powers of the Commission are quite limited. I mean, aren't there much bigger questions here about whether countries want more or less Europe?
I think the concrete example of pandemia is one. We can also cite another example over the migration or even the financial crisis. I mean, the signs been there, and I know that foresight community been debating it already for some time. But what was missing was, I would say, bringing these concerns, I would say, this horizon scan, this writing on the wall to the political level, and therefore. We speak in the Commission and in my portfolio about strategic foresight. And strategic for me means acting. So if there are clear signs that something is brewing on the horizon, that I'm there to inform my colleagues to start the action, to understand that phenomenon better, and to prepare, of course, with the colleagues, the action plan, how to deal with the potential crises. And I think this is very important, and that was something what was missing. And if it comes to the competencies, you have seen that also in this health crisis that there was a clear understanding from the member states that to deal with pandemic of this scale more efficiently, we need to coordinate better. We have to cooperate in more concerted way, and therefore we came with a proposal of the health union. We can do it within the current treaties, with the current competencies, and I was debating that proposal also yesterday with the Europe ministers in the General Affairs Council, and there is really the general support for that. So I think that this is just one proof to show that very often the crisis is pushing the Europe towards stronger togetherness, to better coordination, and I think that treaties are really offering us a lot of possibilities how we can deal with the issues more efficiently, and the health union is a concrete example how we can do that.
One of the other areas you've identified is supply chains, and within that, and clearly there are other people in the Commission also working on this. Within that, this ranges from everything from pharmaceuticals, so very closely related to the pandemic, to much bigger industrial questions about the supply of raw materials. Now, clearly there are big questions about the extent to which this is about diversity of chains, the extent to which this is about bringing production back to Europe. And there are clearly concerns that have already been raised that, for example, the environmental impact of more mining or, more big pharma factories making drugs on a massive scale in the EU could conflict with other EU ambitions on, for example, the environment. I mean, do you think that these tensions are going to just grow? And if so, how do you deal with them?
I think that you rightly pointed out the issue of European resilience. I mean, this was the first lesson learned from this first 3 months of COVID crisis, where we realized how vulnerable the Europe could be if the supply chains and transport routes are disrupted or interrupted. And therefore, we also devoted our first strategic foresight report to the resilience. And I think one of the key conclusions from that exercise was that we need more strategic autonomy in Europe. We need more economic of political sovereignty for the European Union. And it also is bringing the examples how much we can achieve together if we really focus our minds on what we want to accomplish. As you know, I'm heading the European Battery Alliance, and it was a little bit such anticipated foresight exercise when we started with the alliance 3 years ago, just simply not to be dependent on the supply of such a key technology as batteries, especially in the time where we want to transform the whole mobility sector in the European Union. Same applies for the critical raw materials. I was working in the previous commission on the energy security and how it was important to diversify the number of suppliers of fossil fuels. And I just really wouldn't like to see that this dependency would be replaced by the dependency on critical raw materials, which are getting mostly from China or from companies which are already controlled by China. Therefore, we came with the Alliance for Critical Raw Materials, and we see it as a very good model for other key technologies we want to develop, like for hydrogen. So I think that in the course of the next year, because the theme for the next strategic foresight report should be open strategic autonomy, where we want to study this issue in a great detail. What is the lessons learned? What is the state of our global value chains? What we can do to make sure that we would have more autonomy of our action in the political and economic field, and upon what we have to focus. So I'm sure that this is very, very exciting topic, because I see already the debate very much brewing on this issue, and therefore I'm sure that we would profit a lot when we get the best scientific and foresight minds focusing on this issue for the next year.
And are you confident that there is sufficient cooperation and trust between member states on this? Because if you're going to take an EU view of certain raw materials. Well, you can see the logic of that, but in the end, these are physical factories, physical facilities, and they will have to be in country X or country Y. One of the lessons of the pandemic we saw at the start was that countries in an emergency, they very quickly introduced export limits, they shut borders, and this created tensions between them and with the European Commission. I mean, how are you going to get it to a state where you can get member states to have that confidence in each other to say, yeah, just because the factory is in this country, it will serve the whole of the EU, even in an emergency?
Yeah, a very concrete example I can just to make it. I would say even more vivid is the issue of lithium. I mean, thanks to our foresight exercise, we calculated quite precisely that we would need 18 times more lithium in 2030 than today, and 60 times more in 2050. And on top of it, we also discovered that we have quite substantial reserves of lithium in Europe, in Spain, in Portugal, in France, and in Czech Republic. And that if we would be able to proceed with the mining and add a very important element which is missing right now in Europe, and this is actually refineries for the lithium, because currently they're only in China.
Yeah.
So then we can cover more than half of the lithium demand just from our own sources. You're absolutely right that from one side, there is enormous interest from the business community, from the government, but we know that for the projects of this type, we clearly need to work very hard for public acceptance. And I think you can achieve it only if the local population see the benefit in having or the mine or the refinery, I mean, in this region. And there is a lot of argumentation needed to convince the people in this region that what we are talking about now, that's mining of the 21st century, that we would respect all standards if it comes to environment, and are highest in the world. That the local community must have clearly the benefit from that, and that this is actually something by which this region will really get on the map of the very important global suppliers of the precious materials which will be needed for all the future technologies which we want to develop. So I think that the trust is always very important to earn, and we can earn it only when we will be very transparent, open, and state from the beginning that we aim at the highest standards from the labor point of view, from the environmental standards, and also from the high-tech angle. And I think you will see all of those intentions really put together in the battery regulation, which we are currently working on, and I hope that we will adopt it before the end of this year.
And can you give us a bit of a preview of that? What will you be trying to do with that regulation?
I think, to put it in one sentence, we want to make sure that the batteries which would be placed on European market would be the greenest, the safest, and the most performant on the planet. It means that we want to cover the whole value chain, from sustainable mining through development of the software, which would work very well with all the legislation being passed in the last years, with integrating renewable energy. Then, of course, the reuse, recycle, and we want to make sure that we would include also the passport for these batteries, and also very strong demands on recycle, reuse, and carbon footprint. So I think that all that trends which we are supporting in this twin green and digital revolution would be reflected in this battery regulation. And I believe that we are aiming at such a top quality that the battery regulation which we are proposing will become the global standard for, as I said, safest, most performant, and most sustainable batteries.
And can you give us a sense in concrete terms of some of the other questions you're looking at, particularly perhaps questions that aren't linked to the pandemic? Because, of course, the danger is, I guess, that as everybody focuses understandably on the immediate health crisis, there are other things going on that also need to be addressed.
I think that the issue which is coming across from all trends of economy are skills. So we are really going to prepare such a partial reports next years on what kind of skills do we need in Europe, what it means if we are talking about green jobs. We are talking about high-tech jobs, but also about low-tech jobs, which are also important for Europe. And we are also going to, I would say, deepen our scientific assessment of all the new jobs which are really on the horizon, because we know very well that top 10 jobs of today didn't exist just 5 years ago. And when I'm asking especially the industrialists from these future-oriented technologies, how do you feel in Europe? What are you missing? So they are not missing the investment opportunities. So they are also very, very, very pleased with the labor standards, with the environment, with the infrastructure. They are telling me that there is only one limiting factor, and this might be in a very short period the lack of skilled workforce. So I think that we need to adjust the way how we are preparing, especially the young people, for these jobs of the future. And if we do it well, we will have the guarantee that Europe will continue to have the best trained, best educated workforce, and that they will be having the high value-added jobs, which I think one of the goals of European social economy. So that would be, I think, the major challenge: how to improve the curricula in the primary schools, in high schools, at the universities, to make sure that our people are well prepared for these new jobs, and that we would improve also our reskilling and upskilling programs for the labor force of today to be really prepared for all these opportunities of tomorrow.
So what kind of skills are missing, are you told by business people?
I think what I hear a lot, this is mechanical engineering, chemistry. These are, I would say, all the skills required for artificial intelligence implementations. And I would say all the skills which are somehow linked to the subjects which are not super popular, especially among the young people, if it comes to physics, to chemistry, to mathematics. And I think that we just have to learn how to teach these subjects to the young people in a more attractive way, that they would actually like to study them, that they would not be afraid of them. And I think this would be the challenge for all of us. If we want to be successful in this green and digital transition, we also have to do the same, I would say, revolution and this deep transformation of how we educate our people and how we offer them the new opportunities to get these new skills which are required.
And what can the Commission do there that national governments cannot? And what ability does the Commission have even to get involved in this?
I think that we have something which I called the convening power of the Commission, and we are still in the position which is unquestionable by anyone, that we are regulatory superpower. And I think these are two very important qualities. And what I have seen we have done with the European Battery Alliance to get around one table 500 of the top companies from the field to work with them on what would be the best stage approach. How can we really get the work done on different stages in the whole production, and how to draw the lessons which we can share then with the national governments, with the key industrial stakeholders, with educational institutions. I think that's something which only European Union and European Commission can do on the European scale. And I have seen that what kind of positive dynamics we have started, and we started with the smart specializations of the regions. So we have currently more than 20 regions which are specializing in certain skills, in certain productions, if it comes to the batteries. And I think this is something what we can do in much wider scale. And I know that my very good colleague Thierry Breton is using this blueprint for the formulation of this new industrial strategy for Europe, and therefore we are using the same approach, as I said, for critical raw materials, for hydrogen. I'm sure that we will have other alliances, especially in the field of IT and artificial intelligence.
We're running out of time, so I think this will be the last question. But I'd just like to pick up on your point about Europe or the EU as a regulatory superpower. I mean, this is obviously a very common idea. It's said a lot, and clearly the EU has been very influential in past decades. But are you concerned that actually that influence could be slipping, as, for example, China takes a lot more interest in standard setting and getting a role in global standard setting bodies, and also that the EU is getting left behind in some of the frontier areas, for example, artificial intelligence? I mean, is the superpower status slipping away?
I don't think so, because Europe has become this regulatory superpower not only because of the process and the size of the European market, but because of, I would say, the trademark feature of the European regulation, which guarantees the highest quality. So it was not only adopted by our member states, but very often by global value chains, because if they wanted to market their product somewhere else outside of the European market, I would say if the, let's say, global consumer population have seen that this is manufactured according to the European standards, they always knew that they are going for the highest of the quality, for the best protected trademarks and safest, for example, food, toys, or any other product. So I think that if we continue, and I'm sure we will, to aim for highest quality, for highest consumer protection, I think we shouldn't worry about losing the status. But you're right that in all the areas where we need to speed up, we have to do it, and clearly the aim to have the next decade being the European digital one aims exactly at that, to catch up and to overcome the gaps we might have in certain fields of the digital technologies.
And before we go, any final areas that are on your mind just now that viewers should know about?
I think that I mean this new world is very exciting. Almost every day we are faced with the new technologies. I think a lot we will be hearing from the biomedicine research. Therefore, we are going to establish the special agency for advanced biomedical research. I think we will hear a lot about nanotechnologies, and we will hear also a lot about space technologies and how we can use them in enhancing our green and digital ambitions, and also about the new materials, which I think will be very important for the areas of the smart mobility, for the aviation. And I think that definitely, if it comes to the fuels, I'm sure the future will bring us a lot of different solutions which we are not aware of right now. And I think that therefore we need such a dynamic labor force, because I'm sure that the nature of the jobs as we know them today will be evolving in very rapid pace, and therefore I think we need to have our young people up to the challenge and up to the almost permanent change.
Vice President Sefcovic, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and I am now to introduce the next panel, which is entitled Towards a More Resilient Europe, Assessing Risks, Opportunities and Capabilities.